Good morning. Welcome to a new edition of Fumblegate, and we're glad you've decided to spend some of your day with us.
Happy October to you.
That's right.
And idiot.
Mute the computer.
Idiot.
How many times do we got to go over that?
I know.
God,
it's like the first timer over here.
CTE over here.
I know. CTE gets to you sometimes.
Well, if you want to see how it gets to his tweets, follow us on the Twitter handles at the bottom of the screen. So give us a follow on there. Obviously, as always, we have a lot of stuff to talk about here today. College football will be towards the back half of the show. We'll talk about the potential trouble for Clemson going forward, not just this past week after escaping at North Carolina. Mike Leach is shooting his mouth off again, and maybe not in such a nice way this time. And one Power 5 head coach has lost his job this past week, and we'll just delve into who could be next. And, of course, game picks, upset picks of the week. We'll have those. Thanks a lot, Maryland, for screwing the pooch last week on the upset pick. For me, anyway.
Yeah, I almost had a big upset in college football last week, too.
Bastards.
We're going to talk about it a little bit here, but there were some upsets, not ours, though.
Correct.
Daggum Chippewas. Didn't decide to start playing offense until the fourth quarter.
How about Vegas having a spread at 16? What it wind up?
On the money.
On the money.
Unbelievable. That's why the guys in Vegas that make those spreads get paid big bucks, because on the money with the Chippewas.
At least your team bothered to show up. My boys didn't.
Yeah, they didn't show up till the fourth quarter.
They didn't even get off the plane in Columbia. So.
Yeah, I like what I'm seeing on the Chippewas. It's always frustrating to lose to the Broncos, but I like what I'm seeing so far.
Given where they were a year ago, it's going to take time. It's going to take some time.
I mean, they've already doubled last season's win total. They got a winnable game at home against Eastern this week, and we'll see what happens.
There you go. So let's delve into the NFL first of all, and the big news coming out of last week that's going to continue on into this week and through the rest of the season, and maybe forever for this guy. The NFL seems like they finally had enough of Vontaze Burfict after just another Bush League play in which he launches himself the crown of the helmet right into Jack Doyle's face and completely clears him out. Fortunately, it seems like Jack Doyle's okay. But it was another dirty play from Vontaze Burfict. And finally, as I said, the NFL has had enough. He has been suspended for the rest of the season. He's going to appeal it. I did laugh a day or two ago, Derek Carr's press conference saying that Vontaze Burfict's heart is broken, which I'm not buying for one single...
Don't you have to have a heart for it to be broken?
Yeah, I'm not buying that for one single solitary second, especially when you see this picture right here. And the picture that you see right now is of him jogging off the field, smiling, and he eventually started blowing kisses to the fans in Indianapolis after what he did. So, yeah.
Celebrating the fact that he just made, yet again, another dirty hit.
Correct.
It's so frustrating. And you wonder why... Go
doesn't
all the way back to college.
Yeah.
And you wonder why a guy who had so many awards and had so many tackles and all that stuff at Arizona State went undrafted. And it's always been because of his play on the field. And he's been a dirty player since college. Like, he wasn't worth the risk to a lot of teams. And it looked for a while that the Bengals were going to get a steal. And the reason that this is so not astonishing to us living in Cincinnati is because this is the way he played here in Cincinnati. There was a reason that teams didn't even draft him, considering he had like 300 and something tackles as a college football player.
He was a first-round talent and went undrafted.
First-round talent who didn't get drafted, and it wasn't because he was hurt. It was because he had character issues. And as we've seen, since he's been in the league, 23 personal fouls, 15 flags for unnecessary roughness.
There you go.
13 suspensions.
This one will be
here's the graphic.
This will be 14.
14
you can see
suspension.
He's been fined almost $470,000 for stuff on the field while he's been suspended for various hits and also the PED suspension a year ago. He's lost almost $4 million because of that. So the personal fouls, the unnecessary roughness penalties, those lead the league, by the way, since he's been in the league.
And it's not even close.
No, it's not. This is the end for him, right? It has to be.
The only way it's the end is if the NFL says he can no longer play. If they suspend him indefinitely rather than just for the.
Do you think another team's gonna want this headache?
I don't know. I mean, he's still talented. That's what makes this so difficult. Is we've seen time and time again that talent makes up for a lot of stuff. People allow people with talent to continue to play because someone will give them a chance, and it's. I want to say it's the end. I want to say that it should be. In my opinion, it should be the last snap of football he ever plays. And here's why. If you disagree with this. What does the NFL put the biggest emphasis on in the last 5 years? What's the biggest thing that they put emphasis on as far as on the field?
Safety.
Player safety. They're in billion-dollar lawsuits right now with families and players who suffer from head injuries and CTE and Alzheimer's and stuff that was brought on by head injuries from playing in the NFL. And if you as the league want to save face or say, hey, look, we're doing something to fix this. Hey, we're making things right. You cannot allow a player who continues to do these things and put people's don't take this lightly, but putting people's lives in danger. Because if you continue to play like that, not only are you going to injure people, but at some point you run a severe risk of putting someone's life in danger. You cannot stick your helmet underneath a guy's chin over and over and over and expect that no one's going to have long-term effects from this. It's tragic because it's scary. Like, seeing some of the hits that happen, it's scary. Like, you go back to the one to Antonio Brown in the playoffs. Like, that initially was very, very scary of whether Antonio Brown was going to get up. And now, some might argue that he already has CTE with the way Antonio Brown's been acting lately. But if, as a league, your emphasis is on player safety and head injuries, you cannot allow a player who plays like this to continue to play, because at some point, something extremely tragic is going to happen.
Let me pose this to you. He's appealing the suspension, and one of the guys that may hear it is Derek Brooks, longtime linebacker for Tampa.
I saw that was ironic.
What would you make then under the scenario if he appeals this and it gets reduced down from a season long to 8 games? Does that
won't surprise me.
Does that throw away the league's credibility then when they say that the focus is on player safety?
Yeah, I think it does a little bit. And like you mentioned, Derek Brooks may hear the appeal.
Or Doritos for $1.
You may know
and enter for a chance to instantly win an NFLShop.com gift card.
Probably have lots of hits like this when he was playing back when they were fully legal.
I'm out here talking crazy.
It's going to be interesting how the league handles it. But the other thing too is, and this separate from the league itself, at some point players are going to say, "Hey, we don't want this guy in our league." Like, if I'm a young guy and I have some power, I'm going to say, "Hey, I don't want this guy on the field because I don't want to take a hit from him that could jeopardize my career, could jeopardize my health, could jeopardize my long-term mental capacity or whatever." Like, there's probably, my guess, a little bit of background noise coming from players to owners to get to the league to say, "Hey, listen, this guy's not good for our game right now." And you think a guy like Drew Brees wants to take a hit like that? If Drew Brees is scrambling and he takes a hit like that, or Tom Brady, or at some point, it's going to happen to either a big name player or it's going to put a player out of the game permanently. From a severe injury. And I think players probably should be saying, "Listen, I don't want this in my league because I don't want to be the guy who takes that hit who I can't walk anymore because of this guy being an idiot." So it's going to be interesting to see what the league does, if they reduce suspension or if they roll with it. Again, I think he shouldn't play ever again, but we don't get to make decisions, and the guy who ultimately makes the decision. We know how he has on suspensions. Sometimes they're just arbitrary numbers, so we'll see what ends up happening.
2 points that I also want to make with this. Number one, what does it say about the Raiders that they made him a captain?
Just stupid.
I know
you want to like the Raiders, and we've mentioned it before. Football's more fun when the Raiders are competitive, but like, that's just dumb. Like, What about what he does thinks that he knows what he's doing? I don't understand.
You got to tip your hat to the entire team.
Like, why would you make a guy with the history he has a captain? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, then you also have a guy, John Runyon, who was a longtime offensive tackle in the league, mainly for Philadelphia. He's now the VP of football operations. He has since sent down a letter to Burfict explaining the suspension. And there's an audio issue there, folks. I do apologize for that. This is the letter he sent in part to Vontaze Burfict. Quote, "There were no mitigating circumstances on this play. Your contact was unnecessary, flagrant, and should have been avoided. For your actions, you were penalized and disqualified from the game. Following each of your previous rule violations, you were warned by me and each of the jointly appealed appeals officers that future violations would result in escalated accountability measures. However, you have continued to flagrantly abuse rules designated to protect yourself and your opponents from unnecessary risk. Your extensive history of rules violations is factored in this decision regarding accountability measures." End quote. So, again, it's trying to tell him that how many times do we have to tell you before we finally take this away from him?
How many times do we need to warn you and tell you, like, this is not how you conduct yourself? And, hopefully, if he comes back in the league, hopefully he takes it to heart. I doubt that's going to be the case. Unfortunately, with his history, again, going all the way back to his college days, I don't see it changing.
No, he is what he is.
He is what he is, and he's going to be a dirty player, and he's going to make stupid plays, and he's going to try and take somebody's head off, and Lord willing, it won't happen to the point where someone has to get severely injured for it to make sense. If he plays anymore,
it's just to make a play like this after he's been fined, after he's been suspended, after he's had meetings with Roger Goodell, who you would presume would tell him, knock it off, dude. And he continues to do it. That right there, on top of the fact, the picture, and I'm going to put it up again here, of him smiling and blowing kisses to the crowd. That right there, I think, is what earned him the season-long suspension. On top of the fact, yes, the hit was what it was, but the fact that you're gloating as you go off the field and blowing kisses to the crowd for potentially permanently injuring somebody else because you're the absolute moron there, that tells you right there, this moron does not get it. He's not ever going to get it. And so because of that, he should never play in the NFL again. He should be done. Go find another way in life and just go away. Yeah. Be out of the public eye. He
needs to. Again, I agree. I think he needs to be done with football, and unfortunately, we'll see how the NFL plays out. But with the appeals process, I mean, he's going to get his day. But we'll see. I think that there needs to be some pressure from players to say, hey, this is for our well-being. He can't play football.
I wouldn't want that in my locker room.
No, I wouldn't either.
As a teammate,
I certainly wouldn't want to play against it. Again,
correct.
Guy like Drew Brees, does Drew Brees want to take a hit from Burfict and end his career?
What about a guy like what about a guy like Lamar Jackson, who we know is going to run the ball? Even though Jim Harbaugh lied.
Guys, but I mean, a well-respected player who's been around a long time. Is that what it's going to take to finally end this guy's career? And hopefully, it doesn't come to that. We don't want that to happen.
Let's move on, and hopefully, it's the last time we in football ever discuss Vontaze Burfict ever again, because
until we hear about his retirement or forced retirement.
And enough's enough. All right, let's move on to the field, and let's talk about something a little more fun. Minshew Mania is running wild, brother. A comeback win in Denver, who, by the way, Denver's now lost 8 straight going back to last year. But, hey, Flacco's entering his prime.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
So Minshew Mania continues to do his thing. He's got the bandana. He's got the mustache, and then they're winning games. It helps when you have Leonard Fournette go for 230, but nevertheless, he made plays when he had to. So Gardner Minshew's been named today the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Month. So obviously playing well in the absence of Nick Foles. And the question at the bottom of your screen right now: should Jacksonville, when healthy, go back to BDN when healthy? And again, BDN stands for
Big Dick Nick.
There you go. So
it's the greatest nickname in sport. I love
it. There you go. And by the way, before we get to that, Elder Boy in the comments, we thank you for your comments. Take a moment to laugh about Booger McFarland's comment about Zach Taylor. He said Zach will get the Bengals turnaround when the owner lets him spend money. Booger McFarland apparently has never heard of the Cincinnati Bengals, even though he just called that show that they laid down in Pittsburgh last week there, pal. No. And Elder Boy's right. Quote, Mike Brown won't unass a nickel.
No, that's true. And the other thing, when he was making the comments, Booger, again, if you want to,
this is the same Booger McFarland who said Josh Allen. He's excited for Josh Allen when he gets to the NFL to get some decent coaching.
Yeah.
The Josh Allen who turned from a 2-star recruit into the 7th pick of the draft.
Yeah,
but he needs better coaching.
Booger's an idiot. He also mentioned during that Monday night game that he really liked what the Bengals offense was doing this season. At that point in the game, they had 107. It was midway through the fourth quarter. They had 176 total yards and 2 turnovers. That was their offense thus far in an NFL game.
But anyway, back to Gardner Minshew. Should he keep the job when Nick Foles is healthy?
I think he has to. And we've talked about this with quarterback controversies before. We talked about it with Fitzmagic and Punchface before. It's you ride the hot hand, and if you're winning, how do you take the job away from a guy who's winning games? I know they paid Big Dick Nick $88 million, or that's what the contract's worth. But if a guy's winning games for you, how do you take the ball out of his hands? I don't understand. How you do something like that. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when he comes back. But if they're still winning and they're in playoff contention, which right now they are because their entire league is 2-2. I don't know how you take the ball out of his hands. And you look at the numbers. So Nick Foles did a similar thing with Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. So Nick Foles understands how this system works. And if you look at the first 3 games, now this is a small sample size, but the first 3 games that Minshew had replacing Nick Foles versus the first 3 games that Nick Foles replaced Carson Wentz. Minshew has a better completion percentage. He has more yards, same amount of touchdowns, but 0 interceptions, and Nick Foles had thrown 2. And you look at overall QBR, 77 to 100. The numbers say you have to ride with the guy. Like they rode with Nick Foles with numbers worse than what Minshew has right now. Now, this is a different franchise, but I think as long as he's playing well, you got to keep going with him.
I just wonder with it, and I understand the point of riding the hot hand. I do. But you also had in this particular game against Denver, your defense got you behind. Granted, because they were giving up points to freaking Joe Flacco.
Yeah, who gives up points to Joe Flacco? So 6-yard dump down routes.
So that's not good. That was another thing too. Noah Fant, the tight end that he drafted in the first round, caught a 25-yard touchdown pass. It was actually a screen. Yeah. He ran the rest of the way, so it kind of pissed me off that Flacco gets credit.
Yeah, credit for a 25-yard pass.
Correct, but also it's hard to rely on Leonard Fournette running for 225 yards every week.
It's not going to happen every week.
And 190 of that in the second. Now he did lead him to the win. It's Tennessee. It was on the Thursday night.
Yeah.
That was the week after Tennessee had bludgeoned Cleveland, and so everybody kind of just thought, "Oh, Foles is out. Minshew's in. He's from a system at Washington State that does not translate to the NFL." And we'll talk about Mike Leach a little bit later on.
Yeah,
it's a lot to ask for him, and so you wonder now. He's now won a game in which his defense didn't bring their A game against Denver, but he also had Leonard Fournette run for 230 yards. I'm curious to see what's going to happen when the defense doesn't bring their A game again, when they come against a team, put some points on them, and it's not Leonard Fournette's day. Because Leonard Fournette, as we've seen throughout his career, even while healthy, he's been very hot and cold. He'll get you 180, 190, and then 3 weeks in a row he won't crack 50.
Yeah, he'll get you 40 yards.
So that's the thing with it. You're inclined, at least I'm more inclined to say, when Foles comes back, it's his job. I understand the hot hand part, but Nick Foles is the more proven commodity.
Yeah,
that he
and they're paying him to be.
They're paying him to be, but he also has worked within an offense in Philadelphia to where he hasn't necessarily didn't have to have a running game.
Yeah.
and took him to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They relied on him.
He's a Super Bowl MVP, and there's not a lot of people out there that can say that.
So it's. I understand the ride the hot hand thing, but how far can it? What does Minshew do again when the defense doesn't have their A game on, which happens, and Leonard Fournette has one of his games where he's a no-show?
Yeah, and again, it's a small sample size. We're 3 games into it, and I think Nick Foles, they're expecting him to be out at least 3 more weeks.
The one thing that is a saving grace right now is the division is garbage.
Yeah, the division's trash. The entire division is 2-2.
Every team's 2-2.
So they're like, again, if they win the next 3 and they win them convincingly, I don't know how you go back to Nick Foles, but you are paying Nick Foles to be your starter. And again, you're going to run into a situation at some point in time where you need Nick Foles' skill set over Gardner Minshew's skill set. So I understand going back.
And
to it.
It's probably also going to be an instance where a game where Minshew turns it over 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, he's not going to continue to not throw an interception. 3 games without an interception to start your NFL career is pretty good for a 7th-round draft pick,
small
6th-round draft pick.
Small sample size,
but it's a small sample size.
But
here's the beauty of all of this is that it looks like Jacksonville has a quarterback of the future. Again, 3-game sample size, but the advantage that they have, and I was looking at the contract that they wrote for Nick Foles. It's $88 million. That's a big number for 4 years. But 2021 is their out year. They can cut him in 2021, and there is 0 guaranteed money after 2021. Now, he's due a roster bonus if he's on the roster to start the 2021 season, which I believe is like March 3rd. The fiscal year or whatever you want to call it for the NFL starts on March 3rd. That's when free agency opens. If he's on the roster that day, they owe him $5 million. So if they cut him before that, they don't owe him anything for the rest of that contract, which gives them their out. And again, a 3-game sample size, and how's Gardner Minshew going to be going forward? Looks pretty good right now. He's a marketing dream. If you look at the stories, you go out and search the urgent legends of Gardner Minshew about how he tried to break his own hand, how he used to party in college, and nobody beats Washington State at a party, and like the urban legend of him is building. The mustache and the headband, and Steve Spurrier came to see him one day when he was stretching in the locker room, and he was stretching in his jockstrap, and Steve Spurrier just said, "Well, tell him good job," because he didn't want to talk to him and that. But anyway, luckily for Jacksonville, they built themselves an out in 2021. If Minshew's going to be their guy, they get out of this Nick Foles deal for relatively cheap, and they don't owe him anything after 2021. So we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, he's going to have about 3 more games at least before Big Dick Nick gets back to see how he performs. And if he's 3-0 in those games and he's maintains being the backup for the rest of the season, and gets a full off season and everything, and we'll see where they stand next year. Obviously, the more experience he can get without actually being on the field, the better. But we'll see where it goes from here. And again, the contract bodes well for this kind of competition because in 2021 they can get out of it for cheap and have Gardner Minshew waiting if that's the direction they choose to go.
Well, and also you have, too, the way Minshew's playing. If Foles returns and he comes back into action and is just fine, plays like they think he's going to, like the way they paid him to play.
Yeah,
trade
bait.
Exactly. Now you got trade bait with Minshew, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a lot of experience to gain your money. I mean, you look at Chase Daniel, who's now the starter in Chicago. Now that Trubisky's hurt, Chase Daniel has started 4 games in the NFL, and he's made $34 million.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very possible now, teams will be willing to give up stuff for a known commodity in Gardner Minshew, who's still a young guy, too, as opposed to trying to draft and develop somebody. So,
it makes sense. And
see, on paper, they're in a good spot.
Speaking of trades, I read mention this morning that Andy Dalton may be available on the trade market.
If I was the Bengals, I'd make everyone available.
Yeah. Well, at this point, everybody should be available. But I read a couple of rumors floating around on the Tweeterverse.
Well, you've got because you drafted Ryan Finley in the 4th round. So if you do this, because obviously this is a lost season for Cincinnati.
Yeah, they're fighting to win. Vegas odds makers giving them the over under at 3 wins.
They're headed that way.
That's pretty accurate.
They're headed that way.
See what happens.
So if you do that, and I think also, I hate saying it because they've both been really, really good. Throw feelers out there for Geno Atkins. Throw feelers out there for Carlos Dunlap. Yeah. Get something now while they're still
AJ Green. I mean,
well, he's going into he's a free agent next year, so he's as good.
They
don't
need to trade him.
He's as good as gone.
But you can give him a short term. You might be able to get something out of him because he's a short term investment for a team that's a playoff contender.
You drafted Ryan Finley in the 4th round, so if you move on from Dalton this year, you've got to look at Finley for the rest of the year. You have multiple guys that are going to be at the top end of the draft next year with Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert from Oregon. There's a couple other guys that'll probably work their way up there. So you have options at the top of the draft next year, but it also gives you the option to evaluate Finley the rest of this season. You don't spend a 4th-round pick on a guy just to fill a roster
because,
spot.
I mean, it's not a 5th-round pick where you don't expect him to play.
Yeah, I mean,
they get hurt anyway. Slaps.
I mean, at least you took him in a spot. At least you took him in a spot in a round where he has a possibility of playing.
Yeah.
So
no, I thought that was interesting that the move is to move on from Andy Dalton, which I wholeheartedly agree. I think Andy Dalton's not your answer. Now their offensive line. Pro Football Focus.
I feel bad.
Worst performance ever for an offensive line in 1-on-1 matchups.
Well, he got sacked 8 times. He got hit 12 other times.
Yeah, their offensive line is.
You could
porous.
see,
it's bad.
If you saw the post game press conference for Dalton, you could see he was aching to throw every member of his offensive line under the bus.
Yeah, he wanted to say something really bad.
He wanted to trash every single one of them, and being the team guy. You can't do that, so he didn't. It wouldn't surprise me, and they'll get something for him because he is a proven starter in the NFL. Now,
he's a proven game manager. He can manage games.
He has not had a lot of luck in his career. Some of that's brought on himself. Not all of it is brought on himself.
Yeah.
The first number of years there, he had Marvin Lewis to anchor him to the ground.
Which, by the way, how bad does it look not having Marvin? Like, Zach Taylor, New Day, and all this crap. Like, maybe I told you so, and maybe fans are missing Marvin Lewis a little more than they thought they would.
No, they're not missing Marvin Lewis.
3-13, I'd be missing Marvin Lewis.
I think the biggest thing was coming off of this past this game against Pittsburgh is they're not even competitive.
They're inept. Like their offense is inept, and for a guy who's supposed to be an offensive guy.
And I wonder with that. Do we see an instance like we saw in Jacksonville last year where the defense who's okay, the Bengals defense okay, their strength is up front, do they just quit? Because what's the point?
I think this team in general it's hard to say 4 weeks in, but it might be a tipping point. We're a quarter way through the season, and they might be at a tipping point already for the Bengals.
Well, we're a quarter of the way through the season, and the Bengals obviously stink. Nobody, I think, really expected anything else. I think people didn't expect them to be this bad against Pittsburgh on Monday night, especially with freaking check down Mason Rudolph. Only throwing 5 or 6 incompletions. But anyway, they're probably not one of the most surprising or disappointing teams in the league after 4 weeks. I think it's fair to say everybody kind of expected them to be where they are.
I disagree. I have them as one of my most disappointing teams.
Really?
57 total points. The only team that they outscored in the NFL so far is the Dolphins, who've been tanking since week 1.
But you knew this offense was going to be atrocious because they didn't invest anything in the offensive line. You could make the point.
But the Bengals don't invest anything in anything. They never do. Like, you sign Bobby Hart and you re-sign Andre Smith. Like, their offensive line was going to be bad. But 57 points in 4 games
but you also
for
look
an
at,
NFL franchise, and the stinker on Monday night where they had just over 200 yards of total offense.
But you could also look at it and say probably should have won the game against Seattle week 1.
Yeah.
If Randy Bullock to miss field. Should have beat Buffalo week 3.
Who might be a little better than we thought, and that's one of my other teams I got
hung tough with New England. So I'm just a little surprised that I'm not surprised that they're 0-4.
I'm not surprised they're 0-4.
I think it's just the bad taste in the mouth after just laying an egg.
How inept they are. They're just so inept on offense. Like 57 to you literally the only team in the NFL they've outscored is the Dolphins, and the Dolphins don't even want to win. Like they've said since week 1, we're going to tank.
You watch that offensive line performance. I mean, you're obviously going to pay attention more to that up front.
But come up with something. Like you have to find. Like if Zach Taylor's the offensive guy, and he worked with Sean McVay. Come up with something. Like you got to give me something more than 3 points and 200 yards on Monday Night Football. Now this is the Bengals, and they don't perform in prime time, and they haven't ever. But and Mike Tomlin, by the way, I heard Mike Tomlin 6-0 on Monday Night Football, by the way.
They've won Pittsburgh's won 17 straight Monday Night Football home games. So
turns out it wasn't such a stinker if you're a Steelers fan.
So anyway, you have the Bengals as one of your most disappointing.
I got the Bengals, and I got the Falcons at 1-3 is
yeah.
disappointing. Like that's just astonishing that they're they're behind the Bucks and the Panthers. Like,
Dead last.
who expected the double punch faces to be ahead of Matt Ryan?
Punchface Carolina hasn't even played the last 2 weeks.
I know, it's like.
Which, by the way, what do you make of him putting on a YouTube video saying I wasn't honest with the team about how hurt I was? Now I'm going to stay away from football.
No, shut up, Cam Newton. Like, again, we mentioned it similar to the Andrew Luck situation where maybe he's just he's beat up and he's not healthy and he's going to retire from football for health reasons or whatever. Shut up, like. You dress like a kid drew your outfit on a piece of paper and then somebody created it for you and you wear it anyway with babushkas and all this shit. He's got accessories and scarves and short pants and the AC/DC suit look and like.
What do you make of him saying this stuff, putting it out on a YouTube video?
It's just dumb.
Like, I mean, what kind of idiots talk about football on YouTube?
Yeah, you're trying to defend yourself. Like you're trying to defend the fact, I wasn't honest with how hurt I really was. Well, shut up. Like,
there's one way you could spin that. Yeah, he's trying to gut it out for the team, but at some point they got to know when you're costing the team in the long run.
Yeah, like you're not effective anymore when you're healthy. So why are you trying to pretend?
So back to Atlanta. They're one of my disappointing teams as well. The opener they give up 28 to Minnesota. And as we've seen since then, Minnesota cannot score. They cannot do anything with Kirk Cousins. If he was in Washington, it'd be Kurt Cousins, but it's actually Kirk Cousins. Yeah, we saw them, put up 6 against Chicago, and the Bears have a really good defense. They have a really good defense. Really good. Don't get me wrong, but you
show me something.
You knocked out Trubisky, and you could not overcome Chase Daniel.
Yeah. The Bears' offense is not prolific by any means.
And even leading into that, Cousins can't stop screwing up or can't stop turning the ball over. He had to apologize to Adam Thielen for calling him out at one point. They paid a lot of money to Adam Thielen. They paid a lot of money to Stephon Diggs. We know, obviously, they forked out $84 million guaranteed to Kirk Cousins, and they cannot score.
Yeah, they can't
score. Atlanta gave up 28 to them. And then this past week, you lose at home to the Tennessee Titans by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Again, that's
there is way too much talent
these
on
all
that.
Correlate because one of my surprises is that the entire AFC South is 2-2, including the Tennessee Titans, who we thought weren't going to be a very good football team, but they're sitting there at 2-2.
It's going to be 9 wins.
Yeah,
but then you also have Houston lose at home to Carolina, who has Kyle Allen as their quarterback and not Punchface.
Yeah, it's a lot of weird things happening so far. The 3-1 Bills, who a friend of mine went to the Bills-Bengals game, again, a game that the Bengals could have won. And he said, a lot of Bills fans are thinking they're headed for the Super Bowl. They're 3-0.
Good story.
Let's see what happens against the Patriots.
Held their own.
They played pretty good against the Patriots.
Josh Allen there had 3 picks.
Yeah, and they had a blocked punt that ended up being a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like the Bills. A little surprising at 3-1. Like, not that they're 3-1, but how they did it, and they competed really well against the Patriots team.
And Frank,
who, by all amount, people are chalking them up for the Super Bowl.
Well, and
they competed pretty well.
You have Frank Gore there, who ran for over 100 yards on 17 carries. Apparently, he's found the fountain of youth, and he's keeping it to himself.
Yeah, what? 38? How old is he?
37, 38.
Yeah,
he just went over.
He's older than me.
He just went over 15,000 yards, and the funny thing is, there's still people out there who don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, somebody. I saw the Twitter argument. Somebody posted the numbers and said he's essentially top 5 in every statistical category for running backs. And somebody posed the question, how do people feel like he's not a Hall of Famer? And the people, the idiots responding saying, no, he's not a Hall of Famer, just blew my mind. Like, how are you top 5? Like, look at any other position in the NFL. A guy who's top 5 statistically, you would never argue that a player in that realm would not be a Hall of Famer. Like, if you look at the top 5 quarterbacks statistically of all time, there's none of them that you would say, oh, that guy's not a Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe your argument at the time is Dan Marino, because Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. Oh, he's not a Hall of Famer. No, you sound like an idiot.
Yeah.
So now you're going to try and make that same argument with Frank Gore? Like, he's top 5 statistically in all these categories. Oh, he's not a Hall of Famer? No, you sound like an idiot. He is a Hall of Famer. Like, okay, so he doesn't have, like, a bunch of Pro Bowls, and he doesn't have, like, all these all-pros, but he had a string of, like, 7 seasons in a row where he was really good, except for I think it was 6 out of 7 seasons, because he missed, like the 2014 season or 2013 with an injury. But the people that try and argue that he's not a Hall of Famer blow my mind.
He's right near.
Statistically, who cares?
He's with Barry Sanders all the time. Now, I know Sanders only did it in 10 years. So
Sanders did do it in 10 years, but longevity and being able to do it at a high level for this long, how are you going to convince me he's not a Hall of Famer?
Another surprising team out there, and they're not my most surprising team. How about the Detroit Lions?
Yeah,
lost a tough one against Kansas City. Kansas City scored with 20
they played
seconds.
really well against Kansas City.
Right there with it. And to that point, Jimmy James, who's watching us on YouTube today, thank you, Jimmy, for checking us out, wants to know, is this year Matt Stafford wins a playoff game?
I still think they got to get to the playoffs, and with the
that division is brutal.
The division is brutal, and unfortunately for them, I don't think you can get two teams from that division into the playoffs. If you look at the NFC, I don't think, three teams, because they're
going to get two.
Here's what you have to figure. Watching the Packers, and there's still a little question mark on offense and what they're doing on offense.
They're my surprise team, but go ahead.
Yeah, but the Bears defense is really good, and again, they have to go through this meat grinder of the division. I don't know if they're going to be able to get three teams in the playoffs, and I don't know if they're going to somehow get into that second spot and get past either the Packers or the Bears to get into the playoffs.
But the good news is for Lions fans, certainly coming into the year, and we talked about it on our preview show before the season kicked off, that they were the team that was in that division that was, at the time, we thought for sure they were on the outside looking in.
Yeah, and it
doesn't
appear that way. And,
no,
they certainly look better than the Vikings do right now. And again, Kirk Cousins, we can talk all about the money invested in him and how they're not getting a return on that investment. I just don't know if they're going to get in the playoffs. They very well could be 10-6 and not make the playoffs.
Well, they'd be 10-5-1.
Well, 10-5-1. Correct. They could very well be 10-5-1 and not make the playoffs, just because you look at other teams in the NFC. Tell me who's going to miss the playoffs? Are the Cowboys missing the playoffs? You're gonna
have the Cowboys and Eagles out of the East. The Giants are 2-2 right now. I would venture against they're going to fade. Yeah, they're going to fade.
I'm not betting on them, but the Seahawks, Rams, 49ers, who are again a surprising 3-0, Packers, Bears, Saints, where are the teams that are going to miss the playoffs that get the Lions in? I just don't see. I don't see both wild cards coming from that division.
It's tough.
And it very well could be 12-4, 11-5, and then 10-5-1, and they don't make the playoffs at 10-5-1.
The surprising team for me, and Atlanta's my most disappointing, but the surprising team for me, and we touched on a second ago, is the Green Bay Packers. And I say that because of the way that they're winning ball games.
Yeah.
You talked about their struggles offensively, and that's a very valid point. They took a tough one on the chin this past Thursday at home against Philadelphia, a week ago, I should say, losing at home to Philly. But when's the last time you could say Green Bay's winning games with their defense?
Yeah.
And the fact that that you go out and you buy Zadarius Smith, former Wildcat, and he comes in, you make a couple other acquisitions. And they come in and immediately turn this thing around. That's the other two.
Defense looks really good.
You don't see a lot of times when you add big free agent additions, they just immediately the defense turns.
Yeah.
You sure as hell ain't seen it with Landon Collins in Washington.
No.
$84 million there, well spent.
I mean,
not that he's a bad player, but he's no help.
No, we did see it last year with Khalil Mack.
Right.
Instantly changing a defense. But in
general,
general,
it doesn't
this isn't
happen.
what happens. And in this offseason, the Packers went out and invested in defense. And it flipped a switch. Their defense is pretty good. Now, if their offense can catch up to their defense, they're going to be scary good. Because their offense, not bad, but
now
still some question marks on offense about what's going on. Aaron Rodgers doesn't look crisp. They're not protecting him as well as they have in the past. And again, the Eagles game, they got the ball there towards the end of the game, and you thought, oh, well, this is the time they go put it away. And they didn't. The Eagles end up winning the game. So it's almost like they don't have the offense quite figured out yet, which is surprising with a veteran quarterback. But maybe part of it is the system that Matt LaFleur brought in, and
it is, and then also the loss.
They're just not ready for it.
Loss of Randall Cobb too, letting him go to Dallas. But I think the one thing that the Green Bay has showed, at least through the first quarter of the season, they have a defense that if they keep playing the way they are now, they can go on the road and win in the playoffs without Aaron Rodgers having his best game. You could win a 17-13 or 20-17 type of game in the playoffs now. So that's the biggest thing surprising to me, because for so many years it was, put it on 12's right arm and he
Yeah,
he has to win it.
Aaron Rodgers can take us to win, and yeah, it seems to be the most well-rounded Packers team that we've seen in quite some time.
Correct. So now let's get on to our game picks, 3 picks as we always do, and we'll start off with a big one tonight, actually, out in the NFC West in that loaded NFC playoff battle that we think will eventually unfold as the season goes along. The LA Rams headed up to Seattle. Of course, the Rams decide they're going to let Punchface Tampa hang 55 on them, a double nickel at home last week. They're on the road now at Seattle. Seattle's also 3-1. They're both fighting to stay a half game behind San Francisco, who has that fun Week 4 bye.
Yeah, odd. I don't know why they went with these Week 4 buys.
It's really weird.
I feel like all the buys should be like Week 8 or later. Just get everybody halfway through the season, and then you start giving people rest. The Week 4 buy, like if I'm a player, I don't want a Week 4 buy. Like I feel like there's not a whole lot to recover from.
I'd rather have like a Week 12 buy.
Yeah, I'd rather have one later, especially if you're a playoff contender. I would rather have a later.
So a big one here tonight. Obviously, we all know about the Rams and they are who they are. But Seattle, of course, they're tucked away up in the Northwest. You don't hear a lot about them. They just continue to do what they do. Russell Wilson continues to be everything for them, and they have a defense that's good enough to keep them in games. And Wilson's a guy who's not really going to beat you. And so, what do you think here?
I got a bounce back game for the Rams. I got the Rams winning this one. Just like you mentioned, Russell Wilson being their everything and on offense, and a decent defense, but I like the Rams defense and their front seven a little bit more than I like the way the Seahawks can move the ball. If they contain Russell Wilson, it's going to be a long night for the Seahawks. If Russell Wilson has to be the everything, it's going to make it difficult on them because their defense is pretty good up front. Aaron Donald, obviously, they have a good defensive line. They get to the quarterback. Jared Goff's got to not turn the ball over. He can't throw picks in this game, but I like the Rams.
The Rams also can't have Jared Goff throwing it 68 times.
You got to use a little bit of a run game. Todd Gurley's pretty friggin' good.
Well, and he's also starting to get a little pissed off the fact he's not getting the ball. He only ran the ball 5 times at Tampa. Of course, part of it is their defense just could not stop anything in the first half, so they fell behind and basically threw it every play. But nevertheless,
punch face, like that's just disappointing.
Well, to that point, I think this is a bounce back game for the Rams too. You see this basically every year. Even the good teams are going to have one game where they just completely lay an egg. Yeah. The Rams defense is much better than what they showed against Tampa. Granted, I will credit Bruce Arians. He's doing a pretty darn good job with punch face right now.
Yeah, they've done a pretty good job, and it's hard for me because I want Tampa to be successful. My old offensive line coaches down there with Bruce Arians. Shout out to Harold Goodwin. What's up, Goody? I know he's not listening, but I wish he would. Anyway, but I don't want them to be successful because I don't want punch face to be successful, but I like having my coach be successful.
Well, it makes it even worse for you
because
punch face is in a contract year, so worse for you. He might even get paid. So I have the Rams winning this one tonight. Since I like doing scores because I
don't
want to be wrong. It's hard to be vague.
No.
If you're more vague, it's hard to be wrong.
Yeah.
Rams win 27-24. Let's move to Monday night, and when we'll bounce back for one more at the end. The Cleveland Browns headed west after a very impressive win at Baltimore, correctly predicted by me.
Well done.
Did not have the score right. Didn't see Cleveland putting a 40 spot down in
I don't think anybody had that
in
one.
Baltimore, especially with Cleveland secondary still basically all of them out. Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams didn't play there. But they're now headed west to San Francisco to take on a 49ers team. As Adam said, I think it's a surprise at 3-0. After a couple weeks ago, they bludgeoned the Bengals and then get by Mason Rudolph and the Steelers after 5 turnovers. I like Cleveland here. I like Cleveland. I like Cleveland to go on the road and get themselves a win. I think their offense is starting to finally find itself. Offensive line played better, obviously, this past week. It helps that Nick Chubb, came to the dance last week too. He had a big day against Baltimore, and I think this is a Cleveland defense and especially a front that can get after Jimmy Garoppolo. And when you get pressure on him, he can be a little turnover happy, and we saw Pittsburgh do that. Of course, Pittsburgh loves to
score on offense.
Loves to correct. They can't score on offense, but they love to send pressure.
Yep.
Defensively, T.J. Watt, obviously very good, but Dupree on the other side. Devin Bush looks like he's all right now in the middle of that linebacking core. I like Cleveland to go on the road and pick up a second straight win. I have Cleveland winning 28-24.
Yeah, I think Cleveland kind of changed a few minds, and the discussion going into the Ravens week was what are they going to be able to do? Rex Ryan makes a stupid quote in the media and says Baker Mayfield's overrated. Credit to Baker Mayfield for kind of shrugging it off and getting back at him, and I loved after the game he said Rex Ryan deserves no credit for this win. Which,
by the way,
who asked that question?
Yeah, the reporter's
an idiot.
The reporter's an ass clown for asking that
just
question.
Stupid, but
dumb question.
Yeah, they kind of flipped the switch and they went into Baltimore, and we thought you correctly predicted it. I wasn't sure that they were going to be able to pull that one off.
The thing is, I just had a gut feeling. There was no deep insight behind it. I just thought they would go in there.
It looks like they've got it figured out right now, and that's that's what it was going to take, was a game like that in Baltimore. And I think it continues to keep rolling here, going to San Francisco. Now it is a cross country trip, and sometimes that messes with teams. My guess is Cleveland does things the right way. They're probably already there for the Monday night game. They're probably, getting acclimated to the 3-hour time difference and everything. Probably staying somewhere a little bit off site, practicing at a college or something. But I think they continue, like you mentioned, getting pressure on the quarterback on Garoppolo. 49ers are without former Chippewa, former All-Pro Joe Staley. He's out for quite a few weeks with a broken leg, suffered in the Bengals game. I think they get to the quarterback, get Garoppolo a little turnover happy, get some picks, and they end up winning this one too, and get back to 3-2 and put themselves right back in the hunt after starting out 1-2. Get them right back in the hunt at 3-2 with 2 straight road wins that are going to look to be pretty impressive over San Francisco, who again we mentioned a bit of surprise at 3-0, but San Francisco's not a bad football team. Turns out they're a little better than maybe we thought they were. So. A win over them, and obviously winning last week in Baltimore. 2 big wins for them to get them back to 3-2.
Cleveland currently 2-0 on the road for the first time since 1994. Think about that.
Wow.
Let's move on now, and the last game we'll talk about here. Sadly, Miami's on a bye this week, so we can't.
We only got one game to cover.
So we can't discuss them and what they will or won't do. They did have a lead this past week.
You know what?
7-3.
They had a little
progress.
fight in them. They had a little fight in them. It looked like
the
they
Chargers,
might be able to cover for a little while. There was a window.
Chargers had to score late to
about
cover.
halftime.
Yeah.
And then the game.
But
don't think the game was ever in doubt. But
so
it did turn.
So we have to shift our focus to America's new favorite game of will they cover? And we're going to move up the East Coast and the Fightin' Jay Grudens, or lack thereof.
Ooh, ouch.
You lose.
Are they in the market for Andy Dalton? Because they might need a quarterback because their quarterback situation is so hot. Jay Gruden knows him.
Case Keenum can't stop turning the ball over, so they put in Dwayne Haskins into a no-win situation after saying going into the week that he was
giving him 0 vote of confidence going into the week. They put him in the game anyway.
He throws 3 picks, including a pick.
His first touchdown pass of his career
to a Michigan man, Jabril Peppers.
to Jabril Peppers. Problem is it went to the Giants scoreboard.
Yeah, that's
he threw his first.
But then you have this
pass.
week, Jay Gruden leading up to the game this week, and you see at the bottom, Washington's hosting New England, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But people asking Jay Gruden, well, who are you going to go with this week? Who are you going to go with this week? He's like, I'm not going to tell you. I got Case is still in a boot. I want to see more of Colt. This is paraphrasing what he said in the press conference. Case Keenum is still in a walking boot, so we don't know what we're going to have with him. Colt McCoy, I want to see more of in the offense and see what he can bring. God. And then literally the best part of it, to finish his quote, and there's Dwayne too. That's all he said about Dwayne Haskins. And he said after the game, after the loss to the Giants, there's no guarantee you're going to play based on where you were drafted, which basically means it's sounding more and more to me like I never wanted Dwayne Haskins to begin with. And what
is going on in Washington?
This was a Daniel Snyder decision.
This organization
and I'm stuck with
can't get on the same page. Like they just can't. Like, is Jay Gruden your guy? And I think he's the next guy to get fired. I think he's fired before the end of the season. But who's pulling the strings? Is Dan Snyder in charge of the roster, which we've seen here in Cincinnati? Mike Brown was in charge of the roster for a very, very long time, and Marvin was forced to play players that he wasn't necessarily comfortable with. it looks like Jay Gruden has the same situation there in Washington where he's forced to – his 53-man roster is already decided for him, and he's got to play with who he's given. Washington is not a good football team right now, and I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel like we talked about. We know with Miami, and Miami's tanking, but one thing they're doing is they're racking up draft picks, and they're getting experience out of the young guys they got. I don't know what Washington's doing. Like, what is the end game? Like, is Dwayne Haskins your end game because you're paying Case Keenum a bunch of money? You are saying now Colt McCoy might be your next quarterback in, but you drafted Dwayne Haskins. So what the end game is in Washington, I have no idea. Oh. This is going to get worse before it gets better for Washington, including this week. I think it's bad for them.
Yeah, they have New England
played a tight one in Buffalo. Well, and I don't think they want that taste in their mouth. So if I'm Washington's defense, I'm a little nervous about what their offense wants to do to them.
New England is going to have a new kicker. Steven Gostkowski was gone on IR with a hip issue.
Oh no!
He's missed several kicks this year. And now
when you don't lose, you don't get to be the FFKOW. So unfortunately, we haven't featured him on the show.
No, but he's
missing kicks in the NFL. Not a good deal.
He's now on IR, and one of the guys they brought in to work out, Mike Nugent.
Did they really?
Yep.
He's still floating around?
He's still floating around at like 37 years old or whatever he is. He'll be on his like ninth game.
See if Shane Graham can still kick. Shane might be available. He's up in East Lansing coaching with Sparty. He might be available.
I'm gonna guess.
Which is even funnier. Shane's up in East Lansing with Matt Coughlin, who fantasy Fumblegate Fatty Kicker of the Week a few weeks ago. Shane Graham's up there.
Send him a text.
Come on, Shane. What are you doing up there? Let's get him right up there.
Okay, so back to this. You can see the number at the bottom of the screen. New England is giving 15.5. Is there any chance Washington covers this?
No.
Okay.
The answer is no.
New England win. Because I like scores because I'm fun. New England wins 45-3.
Quickly, do the Jets cover at Philly? They are getting 13.5. So the Jets cover at Philly.
Nope.
Philly's coming off
because
a big win.
Sam Darnold is still getting over mono, and no.
No, they don't cover either. So, yep. Two no covers on double-digit, almost 2 touchdowns.
I wanted to include Cincinnati on this list, but they're hosting 0-3-1 Arizona this week.
Yeah,
my wife and I will be at the game. I'll send out a tweet or something to let you know.
It'll probably be a relatively tame crowd because there's not a whole lot of Arizona fans here.
There's going to be plenty of good seats available.
Yeah,
I keep asking.
You could probably move down to the front row.
I keep asking Bengals media writers if they would ask the team if it's going to be just like general admission. Just get in and sit where you want.
It's one of those. Well, we know how fickle Cincinnati fans are. If you recall, in years past, there's been incidents where players have to buy tickets.
They're fair weather fans.
Yeah,
just say it.
They are. Well, Cincinnati, the entire Cincinnati area is.
Correct.
The entire tri-state is.
Correct.
Pick the best team, and that's who I'm a fan of this week. We see it with college sports. The fans that are fans of UK basketball but Ohio State football, or when UC was better than Ohio State for a couple of years in there when Brian Kelly and Butch Jones were here, and UC was having a moderately more success than Ohio State was in football, and people are like, oh, I'm a UC football fan now. Like, just pick the best team, and that's who you're a fan of if you live here in the tri-state.
That goes for the Cincinnati media too.
Yeah,
they like to hitch their wagons to the Buckeyes when the Bearcats aren't so.
Yeah. Like, what's the closest team that we can drive to that we can put on the front page of
Columbus is also 100 miles from Cincinnati.
Yeah, well, close enough. They still claim close enough for them for the tri-state to claim them as.
It's weird how Cincinnati people claim the rest of Ohio as still kind of theirs.
Yeah, but then you sneak into Kentucky if
it's no different.
pretty good and UK is good, they'll claim UK basketball.
Well, they'll claim UK basketball, but not UK football.
No, because they're Ohio State football fans because Ohio State's got a better football program.
Correct. Yeah, okay, so
Tri-State.
So yeah, again, New England. This will be a laugher. I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Brady doesn't even finish the game. He may not even.
They got to look for a replacement for him eventually. So
he may not even play in the second half. He may just
use the second half of games.
He may just take the jet and leave at halftime because they probably won't need him.
Well, he's got an 8:00 bedtime. He's got to get to bed.
He's old.
He is. He's really freaking good.
All right. So before we get to college football in general,
we got a lot of college players to talk about before we talk about the games. We got a lot of college players to talk about.
So that being the kickers, of course, and as always, we like to talk about the ones who don't do so well here on the show, because this guy here, being an offensive lineman, despises kickers more than you could ever understand.
No, I'm not a big fan of kickers. In fact, we mentioned it before we went on the air. Right? We almost had to feature our high school kicker on the show this week because he missed an extra point in a 32-yarder.
Mention his name.
Go
ahead. Go ahead now.
Miles Malloy missed a 32-yarder and an extra point. We ended up winning the game by 3. Tough game, by the way. But there was a second in there where we were a little worried about missed kicks.
And what did you tell me you would have done had you lost the game?
I would have fired his ass.
Okay.
Screw that kid. I hate kickers. Man. Hate him.
All right, let's get into this version here. This week's Fumblegate Fatty Kicker of the Week.
So none of these are overwhelmingly astonishing like we've had in the past.
These are just nominees, by the way.
These are nominees, and we have some repeat offenders on here. For those of you who watch the show, there's some repeat offenders that we got. Delaware's Jake Roth. By the way, a chance to win against a Division I opponent or an FCS team. Missed from 36. They end up losing to Pitt 17-14. Idaho, a repeat offender. Idaho's Cade Coffey, who's been on the show before. He missed from 37. They lose to Northern Colorado 27-24. Southern Utah's Kakawa Sissoko. I don't know. He's probably like a Mormon Tongan. But he missed from 23.
He's probably Samoan, and his family will rip your face off.
Yeah, this one, he might actually be able to kick my ass. But he's missed from trained monkey range. He missed from 23. They lose to Cal Poly 24-21. Winless Rice has a chance to get their first win of the season, but their kicker, Will Harrison, missed from 36 during the normal course of the game. They ended up losing in overtime to Louisiana Tech 23-20. Had to go to overtime. They wouldn't have had to if Will Harrison made from 36. Could have had their first win of the season. Another repeat offender on the show, Iowa State's Connor Ass Alley. By the way, great kicker name, Ass Alley, but spelled exactly like I said it, Ass Alley. He missed from 49, got one block from 49. They lose to Baylor 23-21. Makes me a little nervous because we talked about Iowa State a couple of years ago. Like Iowa State looked to have everything going in the right direction. Then they lose to hapless Baylor by
Baylor's getting better.
Baylor's getting better.
Matt Rule just got himself a brand new contract extension.
Yep.
They've extended the AD there for like 10 more years. They're getting better.
They're getting better, but Iowa State we thought was moving in the right direction.
They lose your boy David Montgomery, and look what happens.
I know. They're getting another kid here from Cincinnati, the leading rusher from Winton Woods.
Mayan Williams, yeah. And I saw him a couple weeks ago. That dude is a truck.
He's a man. Like, that dude is a man.
Keep an eye on him when he goes to Iowa State. And Mayan Williams.
He's going to be all right. He plays for Winton Woods. We're hoping to avoid them in the playoffs. Hopefully,
good luck with that. Good luck with them.
Well, they might not make it, so we'll see. We can talk about that later. BYU's Blake Oldroyd misses from 39 and 42. They got the ball at the end of the game on the 32-yard line, needing what would have been only a field goal because they would have been down 1. Instead, they need a TD because they're down 7. They end up losing to the Rockets. Toledo Rockets beat them 28-21. But if you wouldn't have missed 2 field goals in the regular part of the game or the beginning of the game, could have kicked a 49-yarder to win the game there at the end. Arkansas's Connor Limpert. This one's not so great, but we had to throw it in there. He missed from 51 the first drive of the game. They have the ball in the 12 at the end of the game. Would have been a 29-yarder to win it, but they end up losing by 4 because they needed a touchdown instead of just kicking a 29-yarder to win the game. Oregon State's Beavers. Jordan Choker. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but we're going to pronounce it like that because he's a kicker. Jordan Choker.
Spell it out. Spell his name.
CHOUKAIR. Looks like Choker to me. He missed from 49 and 38. They lose to Stanford 31-28. UCLA's J.J. Molson missed from 39 at the end of the game. They don't even get a chance to go to overtime. They lose to Arizona 20-17. Don't miss at the end of the game from 39, you dum-dum.
Well, speaking of missing at the end of the game.
Speaking of missing at the end of the game, and Jason brought me this one. Again, we will find you. Don't worry, we will find you. Carroll University's Carson Roseliup. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right because his name looks funky.
What do you care?
I don't care because he's a kicker. He missed an extra point earlier in the game. They're down 32-30 at the end of the game to Elmhurst.
This is Division 3.
Division 3. But they got the ball on the 1-yard line at the end of the game. 19 seconds left. They got the ball on the 1-yard line. So what do you got to do? First of all,
you go for it.
But it's 4th and 1, and we're down 2. We'll just kick the field goal. We'll go up 1. Leave them about 12 seconds left on the clock. We'll go from there. 19 seconds left in the game. Lines up for a field goal from 18 yards. By the way, folks, this is shorter than an extra point.
This is shorter than trained monkey range.
Shorter than trained monkey range because this is inside extra point range. Inside of extra point range.
My daughter's 18 months old. She could make this game.
Inside of extra point range. And he missed it. 19 seconds left on the clock from 18 yards, which, by the way, 20 is your extra point in college. He missed from 18.
He had an extra point blocked in the game, too.
Yeah, so they could have only been down 1. But you know what? Instead of just winning it with an 18-yard field goal, he missed it. And you look at his picture there online, and now, again, this is Division III, so they don't have, big fancy media guys. But the kid just looks like a kicker. If you were going to do a lineup and you say, hey, what does that kid play now? I know he's wearing a team number. Oh, maybe he's a quarterback or receiver because
he's wearing Shane Graham's number.
Doesn't matter. He looks like a kicker. He's not even a very good one. So, for missing from inside trained monkey range, inside extra point range, Carroll University's Carson Roseliep, I don't even care how you pronounce it. You're this week's winner of the Fumblegate Fatty Kicker of the Week.
Oh, boy.
Dummy. Oh, that's bad. Like, that hurt my heart when you sent me that. Because, I didn't want to have to feature this kid. I mean, he's a kicker. Look at him. Like, he looks like a kicker. I don't know. That's a kicker, if I ever saw one. Like, nice pale arms. Probably gets extra practice at kicking in the side. He doesn't even have to practice with the team.
And as Elder Boy says in the comments, to repeat what you said, we will find you.
We will find you. Like,
there is no hiding.
Yeah, the beauty of, the media in this day and age, I can find any score in any division all the way down to NAI. I can't find NAI on ESPN, but ESPN gives you the scores of every game all the way through the Division III level. So if I see a 3 overtime game where a team wins by 3, guess what? I'm going to go check out the box score for that game and find out why that kicker screwed it up. They went to 3 overtimes. They're going to find you. We will find you. Again, we found this kid, Division III. We found you.
Oh, boy.
Yep. See, Elder Boy found him, too. If you look in the chat right now, Elder Boy went on to find him. Social media is a great thing these days for kickers. You can't hide from us. Can't hide.
One of his hobbies includes lifting.
Well, it doesn't look like it from his arms. might want to move that up his hobbies list then. Oh, he's got it listed number 1. I think he listed the first as last and the last as first. He looks a lot more like the reading and volunteering type. But by the way, good for you. Good for volunteering. I'm happy that he volunteers. He's still a kicker. Our kicker at Turbin High School, he volunteers too, but he's still a kicker. I like him as a kid. I hate him as a kicker. Speaking of close games, though, we had a really close one here in college.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it all season, and we said we didn't see any road bumps in the road for Clemson. But boy, howdy, did they almost gave us a huge road bump there down in Chapel Hill. North Carolina ends up losing the game by 1.
Because they went for a 2-pointer.
Because they went for a 2-point conversion.
And by the way, a terrible play call.
The play call was awful. I like the aggressiveness, the chance to beat the number 1 team. I don't know if I like it at home. I like it more on the road. And I had a chat with my buddies, and our chat we talked about. I like it. I like it more on the road than I do at home because UNC was playing really well with them the entire game.
Yeah, with them all the way.
And I think you just kick the extra point and you
totally,
play for overtime.
Totally get it. The play call, the triple, the option to the right against a Clemson defense who had seen, if you checked out this game, you don't run east to west on them.
No, team speed with Clemson is going to get you eventually.
You don't. Like, if anything,
no offense to North Carolina, your team speed does not compare to Clemson's team speed. You got to go downhill at them.
If you want to give them that option, fine. Have somebody come in behind the offensive line and do the shovel pass inside the line.
Yeah, it was not a good play design.
But now some people are wondering, and the pollsters have too, because they've moved Alabama up to number 1 and dropped Clemson to number 2.
They flip-flop the top 2.
You worried about Clemson?
No.
I'm not.
I'm not either.
No, I think
I don't want to say it's a trap game, but we've mentioned it before. We mentioned it on today's show. Like, there's always a game where you just don't have your best showing. And credit to Mac Brown in North Carolina. They got shit going on over there.
They had every right to win this game.
They did have every right to win this game. And at the end of the day, on paper, the better team ended up winning, and it was closer than anybody thought it was going to be. But every team, I feel like, has a game like this where it's just unnecessarily closer than it should be. And I feel like this was Clemson's kind of wake-up call. They were probably a little complacent coming in.
Yeah, I wonder if they're bored.
Yeah,
because they know their schedule. They know there is nothing.
There's nothing in their
nothing
way.
on their schedule until the college football playoff.
Yeah.
I wonder a little bit if that complacency.
And
if they're
on the road,
they're
in Chapel Hill, and
it's not a rivalry game.
Yeah, it's not a rivalry game. Just maybe it's a little hard to get up for. But again, credit to North Carolina. North Carolina played that game tough as hell. Like they were prepared. They were ready to go.
Yeah, this was no fluke.
It's not. Again, North Carolina's got something going on good down there. Like Chapel Hill, they're playing some pretty good football right now in Chapel Hill. So.
A wake-up call for Clemson at best. And you could very well make the argument they should have lost this one.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what Dabo uses to get them refocused.
I think
going forward. They'll be fine.
Serves as more of a wake-up call, and it
helps
puts them back on the right track.
It helps that they have no ranked teams left on their schedule because their conference is
the ACC is trash.
There you go. So speaking of trash, Washington State, as we told you last week, would lose on the road to Utah, and they did. And after the game, we always love hearing what Mike Leach has to say.
Golden quotes, and he's got another one.
Well,
this is a good one.
Yeah, well, you tell me if it's a
good.
Well,
it's a good quote. It's good for the media to talk about it. I don't know if it's necessarily the right quote. He's going to give you something.
Yeah, they lose their second straight now to Utah. Again, not an easy place to play. Utah's a pretty darn good football team. So after the game, they lose, and at the bottom, as you can read, he calls his players, quote, fat, dumb, happy, and entitled, end quote. I don't like this. Is terrible.
Yeah, I'm not.
This is absolutely terrible.
I'm not on board with the quote. I'm really not.
And
I understand. I guess I understand the premise of it, where you want to
challenge. If you want to challenge them like
complacency, and you want to challenge your team and how they're playing, and try and change the direction of where the season might be heading.
Say this in the locker room, not to the media.
And the wording of it is just it doesn't make sense.
Especially when you throw in, especially the last part, the entitled part, with all of this pay-to-play stuff that's going on now. California has signed the Fair Play Act into law in 2023. Pennsylvania is looking into this. There's a Kentucky legislator that's trying to get this done in the state of Kentucky.
Yeah, a lot of states throwing the idea that.
And apparently it's about to go national as well. Apparently there's a congressman. Apparently it's going to introduce a national fair play.
Yeah, and again, we could probably do a whole show dedicated to that. So we're not going to get into it. And as it moves along, we might have a longer discussion about the California law and where it may be heading.
This type of rant from Mike Leach after a game
to the media, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like calling out your players publicly for the way you feel like they're playing. Just keep it within the locker room. It doesn't make sense.
Using these types of adjectives to describe your players.
Yeah.
Why would you want to go out and fight for him the rest of the year? You've lost 2 games in a row.
Yeah, I
the first one is inexcusable, the way you lost to UCLA. Yeah. This one here, a much more understandable result because Utah is a very good team,
football team,
and you're playing there on the road. That's an understandable one. If you want to point the finger at anybody, Mike Leach, point it at yourself for the way you refused to change yourself when you were up 49-17 against UCLA. And by the way, don't give up 67 points to the freaking UCLA Bruins, who hadn't won a game.
Yeah, your team probably wasn't so excited about that game, or coming into this game.
There may have been some of the hangover effect, sure, but to do this after the game, I'm sorry. This is just.
Utah's a good football team. Like Utah's no slouch. Like they're a top 25 team for a reason.
This is bad.
It's not a good look for your school or your team to call out your players publicly like that.
Why would you want to
come out and say,
hey,
we're not tough enough, or hey, whatever. You don't need to. It's not a good look. And usually I'm with Mike Leach and a lot of things he says. And again, he gives you some golden quotes and he gives you sound bites for the media.
Sure.
I'm not on
Not
board
good.
with this one, Mike. I'm not.
No,
It's
not good.
It's not a good look for you.
So they've lost 2 straight. Obviously, Mike Leach is probably going to stay at Washington State for as long as he wants, unless they start losing.
Unless they start missing bowl games, and I don't.
They're still 3-2, and there's plenty of bad teams in the Pac-12 they can beat on.
They're going to be fine. They're going to make a bowl.
They'll be in a bowl game. So elsewhere in college football, some of the coaching trees are starting to unravel, if you will. Chris Ash finally let go at Rutgers after, and you can understand why, giving up 52 points to Michigan.
Yeah,
that'll get you. That'll get you canned. That'll get you canned. But
yeah, but 8-32 in his time there at Rutgers, 3-26 against the Big Ten.
That's the thing.
It's a no-win situation at Rutgers.
They set the football program up for failure by moving to the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's a no-win situation.
The school's probably getting a truckload more money, and that's what it all boils down to.
They're splitting a bigger piece of a bigger pie.
That's right.
Or a smaller piece of a bigger pie rather than a bigger piece of a smaller pie.
He's
They're getting more money, but bad move for Rutgers.
He's buddies with Ryan Day, so you could easily see him going to Ohio State for career rehab, much like Saban does at Alabama.
He'll probably come back and get a little consulting job with Ohio State.
Nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's a smart thing to do.
In the professional world, and we've talked about it before, in the professional world, like that's your livelihood. The best thing to do is to go with something you can get right away. And if they're going to hire him right away, absolutely go back to Ohio State and go get some money.
Who's next to lose their job?
I got 3 of them, and these are all likely. I think 2 of these are inevitable, and the third one is going to depend on how they finish their season. I got Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee with losses to Georgia State. Their only win against Chattanooga thus far this season, and the SEC is going to chew them up.
Well, they have Georgia this week.
They're going to get trounced by Georgia. Like they're going to. They're looking at 3-9.
It was another 8. Another thing. It was a pretty bad look because one of his players getting arrested. This recently, I don't remember if it was this week or maybe previously, but you had quotes from the incident with Jeremy Pruitt telling the police officer, so basically to the effect of, you're really going to do this? Everywhere else I've been, I've never had a problem with you guys, and now you're going to do this, basically saying you're going to arrest my guy for, I believe,
you're not gonna ignore it?
I believe it was something like assault. You're basically, I've never had a problem anywhere else I've been with this stuff. It's just kind of taken care of. Yeah. That's a really bad look.
No, it's not.
But you had the balls to go to a cop and say, wait, you're going to arrest my kid for breaking the law?
Yeah.
On top of the fact that, they can't beat anybody and they can't do anything right. So much so that Philip Fulmer, who's the athletic director, which, by the way, awful that you have that guy as your athletic director,
not
because
a good AD. Now,
he just continues to loom over. And he's had to come out now and say, I'm not going back to coach. When you have that problem, you might as well start packing your stuff up.
You look at their schedule coming down the pike.
Georgia this week. That's a loss.
Mississippi State, likely a loss. Mississippi State's not good, but I don't know if Tennessee can beat them.
Home game.
They've already lost to Georgia State.
They might get that one because it's at home. But then you have the third Saturday in October, which is a trip to Tuscaloosa. Say if there was a running clock, it would be instituted midway through the second quarter.
Home versus South Carolina, home versus UAB, and they've already lost to Georgia State. UAB can beat them. UAB's not a bad football team.
Mm-hmm.
At UK, at Missouri, and then home versus Vanderbilt. They're going to save face by beating Vanderbilt the last week of the season. But find 5 wins out of that schedule. I don't know if you can win.
Nope.
4 more games in that schedule.
You got to win. You got to win 5 to get bowl eligible.
But I'm saying even getting to 5 wins. So you give them the win against Mississippi State.
That's 2.
Possibly against UAB.
That's 3.
And then finishing the season against Vanderbilt, it puts you at 4-8.
Right.
Some of them are toss-ups. Like South Carolina may be a toss-up. Missouri may be a toss-up.
This is another program that thinks it's still a national power and has not been for 15 years.
They've fallen a lot farther than some of the other programs. Like we've talked about Michigan. They've fallen farther.
Florida State.
But Tennessee may have fallen the farthest. They are bad. They're just not a good school.
The thing is, there is no reason with everything that they have at their disposal, the fact that this is a football program, a football school, it's not a basketball school, despite the fact their basketball program has improved the last few years.
They're pretty good, yeah.
There is no excuse for them to have fallen as bad as they have, and it's been gradual over the last 10 years. So anyway, so Jeremy Pruitt's one on your list. Who else?
I got Lovie Smith in Illinois. They've already lost to Eastern Michigan this season. They're staring down a 2-10 season. You look at their schedule, Lovie Smith, I don't know if it was a good hire. We've seen it before. The NFL guy going back to college.
Well, they
usually
know him.
Doesn't work.
They know him because of coaching the Bears.
Yeah, but it was a name hire, and Illinois. It's again probably a no-win situation. Like Illinois hasn't been competitive since Red Grange. So like, what are you looking for? At Illinois,
Ron Zook had him competitive for a couple.
Ron Zook had him not bad. I want to throw out the Galloping Ghost reference. That was
when they had Rashard Mendenhall.
Yeah,
but anyway, but yes, you're not wrong.
Lovie Smith at Illinois, like he's been there. I think 4 or 5 years now. Like it's time to move along from there. And then this is the one that it's going to depend on how the rest of the season goes. But the expectations at Virginia Tech might be catching up with Justin Fuente.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily think they're going to miss a bowl game, but the expectation at Virginia Tech and you've mentioned it, the game day atmosphere and how much support Virginia Tech gets, they are looking for a lot better team than 6-6 there in Blacksburg.
And you lose at home to Duke 45-10.
And embarrassed by Duke. Like it wasn't even competitive. Like that game was embarrassing if you're a Virginia Tech fan. You're getting chirps. I know that they're getting emails in the AD's department.
You can't
saying,
not.
What are we doing? Like, is Fuente our guy? What's our next move? And probably people who donate a lot of money sending those emails. And at some point, you got to listen to your fan base and you got to listen to your alumni base.
Well,
if you're going to lose $1 million in donations, it's something you have to consider.
It's a tough job. It's a tough job because he's following a legend in Frank Beamer.
Yeah, like I'm not saying this is an easy situation.
No,
but
and it's
the
also
expectations are a lot higher than where they're performing.
Right, exactly. And so you're following a legend in Frank Beamer. You also have to consider Virginia Tech. It's a very, very strong academic institution.
Yes.
And that's going to wipe out a lot of kids you could potentially recruit. So it puts more emphasis on the coach being able to turn what you get into competitive teams. You're not going to consistently pull in 4- and 5-star recruits at Virginia Tech because the academic standards that are set there are so high that a lot of kids that you would love to recruit probably won't qualify, and that's not that. It just is what it is. This is a very high academic school, and so that's definitely one that's to be looked at.
And you look at their schedule coming up at Miami this week, Rhode Island, which you got to factor in as win. A very good UNC team. They're coming to you, but UNC obviously just played with the best team in the country, or what we consider the best team in the country, for 4 quarters.
And you're at Notre Dame. That's a loss.
Wake Forest, probably a loss unless they get it turned around in short order. Georgia Tech's not good.
Wake Forest is unbeaten.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech, you should be able to win that one.
Sure. Pitt, you should be able to beat, but Pitt just played a tough game against Delaware.
But then Pitt also beat UCF, so figure it out.
And then they finish the season with Virginia with the rivalry game.
Right.
They're looking at a 6-6 season, and again, the expectation
that's not good enough.
In Blacksburg is 6-6 isn't good enough. And again, it's a tough situation because you're replacing a legend, but Virginia Tech expects more out of their program than 6-6.
Another guy, the one guy I just have one that's in trouble. Those 3 are definitely on the hot seat. And a guy who got all kinds of love for one game he had last season, Jeff Brom's in trouble at Purdue.
Yeah.
He is in serious trouble. Now, I talk about the one game where they bludgeoned Ohio State.
Beat Ohio State's ass.
Beat them down.
State fans were
beat them down.
How come we're not in the playoff? Because you got your ass beat by Purdue.
There you go. Well, Purdue's carried those struggles. They kind of fell apart towards the end of last year. I don't even know if they made a bowl game last year. I want to say they lost their last game against Northwestern and cost them a bowl game. But anyway,
I don't believe they did.
They're 1-3 this year with losses. A week opening loss at Nevada, and then home losses the last 2 weeks to TCU and Minnesota. You lose at home to row the boat. And by the way, that game, Minnesota's quarterback Tanner Morgan, 21 of 22 for 396 and 4 scores at home.
Yeah, well, they're rowing the boat up there.
Well, and now the problem that Jeff Brom's going to have working against him, or maybe it works for him because he's like Brian Price, the former manager of the Reds. My guys were hurt. Give me another year. His quarterback, Elijah Sindelar, likely out for the season now.
Broke his collarbone.
Yep, he's out for the season. Your one offensive weapon, Rondale Moore, who I still can't fathom how
he ended up at Purdue.
How he got out of the state of Kentucky is hard to fathom to me. He's out hurt now. He's not going to play this week at Penn State. So That's going to be a loss.
Well, they're going to get bludgeoned by Penn State. Regardless of who was playing, they were going to get bludgeoned by Penn State.
But you at least have something offensively you can try to go to.
But you're looking at the rest of their schedule.
Correct.
And
The 4 road games they have left. They have Penn State this week, L. You have to go to Iowa in 2 weeks. Probably going to be an L. You'll probably stay in it because Iowa doesn't blow anybody out. But then towards the end of the year, you still have to go to Northwestern. That's always a tough place to play because the grass is 3 feet tall. And then you have to go to Wisconsin. That's an L.
That's an L. That's an L for a lot of people. Playing in Camp Randall's an L for a lot of people. But
so it just for all the hype that was built up in after beating Ohio State last year, and everybody seemed to kind of forget about Purdue after that point, which is amazing given all the hype that they had. People just didn't really talk about it again, and they brought it on themselves. But now you're 1-3 this year. Nevada's nothing to write home about. I know that's a tough trip going out there to Reno to play the Wolfpack. That's probably a game you should win. TCU, that's a tough one at home. I can understand that one. You lose it by 3 scores, not a good look.
No.
But then you come back the next week
and row the boat at home.
And row the boat where their quarterback throws 1 incompletion and 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. So
and you mentioned it. You look at their schedule going down the stretch. You got to chalk all their road games up as losses. So you got home games against Maryland, Lovie Smith in Illinois, against Nebraska, who appears to be getting a little better now. The Ohio State game didn't look good for them.
Yeah, that was bad.
Ohio State's in a different class in the Big Ten, and we've talked about that before.
They are, but
Ohio
man, Adrian Martinez, vomit, hurl, barf.
Yeah, they were bad
in that one. That was bad.
But you got to win your home games, and even if you only win your remaining home games,
I don't see bowl eligibility.
You don't make it to 6 wins.
I don't think
5 and 7 isn't getting a bowl game.
No,
so it's going to be tough. And again, following a legend and Joe Tiller there at Purdue,
and still trying to look because they've run through coaches,
yep,
trying to follow Joe Tiller. But
they can't find anybody to replace Joe Tiller. And it looked like Brown was going to be the guy for a little while, and there was always smidgens of hope. And obviously, blowing out Ohio State last year is a good look for your program, but. It's tough. Now, I don't think Purdue has as high of expectations from their program. They're not expecting to compete for national championships.
You're expecting to get to 7 or 8 wins.
They're expecting them to compete, and right now they're not competing.
No,
and that's not a good look. And again, a school with a high academic standard, Purdue is
absolutely
a very, very good engineering school,
yes,
and it's very
probably the best
academically to get in. So you're getting a different type of kids, but if you're not changing that into talent onto the field, it's not a good look. You're going to have people questioning.
It's the same. It's the same thing with Rutgers and Virginia Tech. You better know what you're doing as far as developing players because
you got to develop talent.
5-star recruits are not routinely walking. You struck gold with Rondale Moore.
You sure did.
Absolutely struck gold with him, but not much else has gone right there at Purdue other than the win last year against Ohio State. So, guys to keep an eye on that maybe. Programs may be looking for new men, maybe before the end of the season. Who knows? Yeah. Let's move to our 3
Jeremy Pruitt might get fired this weekend.
They're probably going to get dump trucked by Georgia.
Dump trucked by Georgia.
They're going to get dump trucked.
He might get fired this weekend.
Very true. Very possible.
Chris Ash already broke the ice, and Jeremy Pruitt hasn't been getting it done there in Tennessee.
I wouldn't be if that happens. I wouldn't be surprised if Fulmer fires him immediately after the
game.
No.
He might tell him at halftime and then just make him take a different bus home.
He'll meet with the team or do like USC did with Lane Kiffin, pull him off the bus to fire him.
Well, something's happening when Phil Fulmer's already answering questions about whether or not he'll come back. That
the writing's on the wall.
The wheels are turning. So
this is turning into a matter of not if but when.
Yeah, it's
all right. Game picks. Maybe another guy who should be on the hot seat, who we continue to just have fun railing against because he brings it on himself.
Because it's his own fault.
The Michigan Wolverines at home this week,
coming off a big win,
52-0 over Rutgers, who
has 3 Big Ten wins in the last 4 seasons. But it's a big win for him.
Yeah, scored 52 on him though, so that makes your offense
Rutgers
look better.
Ass down, and Shea Patterson's right back in the Heisman discussion.
I'll give credit to a national college football writer, Brett McMurphy, with today being October the 3rd. He declared today Jim Harbaugh Day.
Oh, I love it. That's
10-3. 10-3. Happy Jim Harbaugh Day out there, folks. Much like we talk about 131 was Happy Hugh Jackson Day. Today is now Happy Jim Harbaugh Day.
Yeah, 10-3. 10-3 is going to be a stretch this year.
They're at home hosting Iowa.
Undefeated Iowa.
Coming in 4-0. Michigan's obviously 3-1 after being taken apart by Wisconsin a couple weeks ago. As we accurately told you would happen here on Fumblegate.
Unsurprisingly so. Who you got?
Michigan.
Shut up.
I think if it was at Iowa, obviously the Hawkeyes.
It would be different if it was at Iowa.
But this is at Michigan. Iowa just, they're one of those teams. Kirk Ferentz, you know what you're going to get with them. They're going to pour out 8 to 9, sometimes maybe 10 wins a year. But you also 4-0, yes. But you look at those wins: Miami of Ohio, Rutgers.
Hey, don't discount the Red Hawks.
Iowa State, and then the fighting Mike Polly's. And no offense to our boy Mike Polly,
they dump truck Middle Tennessee State.
They did.
Sorry,
but
Mike.
This is not Murderers Row going into this one. This is their first major test.
It's a little cupcake-ish. It is
not the best. The win over Iowa State, that's a good win. And by the way, Venmo beer guy up over $3 million now.
Yep.
So
that is
good
awesome,
on him.
by the way.
So I think Michigan does just enough here. Iowa's offense usually never travels that well. And I say Michigan does just enough because, again, I like doing scores. I say Michigan wins 21-20.
I don't want them to win.
I didn't say I wanted to win. I just think they will. It's gonna be a terrible football game. By the way, I got
Iowa winning this one, and here's why. Iowa can control the line of scrimmage, and we saw what happens to Michigan when the other team controls the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
Army, for all intents and purposes, should have beat Michigan at Michigan.
Yes.
Wisconsin obviously controlled the line of scrimmage, and Michigan decided they'd score a couple touchdowns at the end of the game just in garbage time.
359 rushing yards.
Yeah. I like Iowa because of the fact that they can control the line of scrimmage, and they don't turn the ball over. Now, their offense isn't, or their defense, the sample size isn't maybe the greatest, but they're only allowing 250 total yards per game. I think that bodes well for a team that's playing against a Michigan offense that isn't very good. Like, we've said it before, Michigan's offense is not good. And I like teams that, even though their competition isn't great, but they also share a common opponent in the Fighting Mike Pollies. The Fighting Mike Pollies put up 21 on Michigan's defense.
Well, yeah, Rutgers, too.
Well, yeah, Rutgers sucks. Rutgers might be one of the worst programs in college football.
They both shut out Rutgers.
They both shut out Rutgers, and so well done there. But I don't know. I just like Iowa.
Okay.
What's exciting about Michigan?
What's exciting about Iowa?
You get everything.
Waving to the kids after the first quarter. That's cool. I'm saying football wise, what's exciting?
Nothing. But what's exciting about Wisconsin?
They're going to run for 350 yards every game.
So
and they're going to put five. They're going to put 5 linemen in the NFL again.
Yeah. But Iowa can do the same thing, and I like Iowa. I like their run game. I like the way they control the line of scrimmage. I got them beating Michigan.
I'm not going to be surprised.
Patterson is their quarterback.
His brother.
Yeah,
we read go back and watch last week's episode. We read his Instagram
post. We read
his brother really loves them some Shea Patterson.
Yeah, he does.
All right, let's move out west, and we still include the Pac-12 here on Fumblegate.
Yeah, we talk about it every once in a while.
Yeah, we thought last week might be the death knell, but no, we'll keep it up because
Mike getting in the playoff.
Because Mike Leach shot his mouth off. So this week, Cal, who laid a stinker at home, losing to freaking Arizona State, who can't score on the road. Butt faces.
What is going on?
So they moved. It tells you the level of what the voters thought of California losing at home to Arizona State. For their first loss, they went from 15th to unranked.
Out.
There you go. So now they're on the road at Oregon. Oregon's 3-1. The only loss being that really tight game in the opener against Auburn.
Who, by the way, if this season continues the way it's going. Maybe Oregon is the team that has a chance to sneak back in the playoffs. Now, again, it's going to have to be against 2 lost teams for them to sneak back in.
They're going to need help, especially because they need Auburn to start losing.
They need Auburn to start losing because obviously the head-to-head doesn't look good for them. But it's going to be interesting to see. The Pac-12 has very narrow shot at getting back in.
This game is in.
This one helps because a lot of teams in the Pac-12 floating around with 1 loss, which makes their league look more competitive. Now, it's going to depends on how it shakes out, but a 1-loss Cal team coming in, and you got to beat them to go to 4-2 or 4-1.
Oregon's going to 4-1
here.
They're going to 4-1. Cal's offense just does not score enough, and especially going to go on the road. I think Oregon.
We mentioned that Cal's a little bit of an anomaly at 4-1.
I think Oregon wins this by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think Oregon wins this one handily. I don't think it's difficult for them, and Eugene's a tough place to play. I'm sure they'll have some neon green jerseys or some shit like that that'll make them look cool. But, undefeated in the Jersey game, but, not probably competing for national championships again this year. But, again, we've talked about it. The Pac-12, their chances of getting in the playoff are slim, but maybe right now Oregon's their best shot at getting there because their only loss being very tough loss to Auburn.
We finally have this week several games between two ranked teams, which is nice to see. It sucks that it took us till week 6 to get there, but
this is the way college football works.
A biggie, this one in Gainesville. Auburn is on the road at Florida. By the way, this is only the second time Auburn has played at Florida in the last 20 years. It's crazy the scheduling quirks.
So weird how scheduling can work like that.
They're both 5-0. Obviously, this is a very big game. Florida wants to keep pace in the East to stick with Georgia. Auburn has, they still got to run the West Gauntlet with, Alabama, LSU. I guess you can throw Texas A&M in there. They continue to underwhelm week after week. But a big one here. Florida obviously doesn't have Felipe Franks. Auburn has a true freshman in Bo Nix going on the road
who's been pretty impressive.
He's been pretty.
Ain't bad.
He's been pretty good thus far. I have Auburn winning this one, and I have this in a very low-scoring game, and I'll give you my score here in a second. Florida's defense is outstanding, can play with just about anybody in the country. You just don't have not had the.
Don't trust their offense.
Yeah, since Dan Mullen's been there, I just do not trust their offense to be able to score enough against Auburn, who probably has, for my money, the best defensive line in college football. And I know you say, what about Clemson? What about Clemson? All those dudes are in the NFL now. They still have very good players that have replaced them, but not to the level of Auburn. I love what I've seen from Bo Nix thus far. I think he is a star in the making.
Yep.
And so with that, I think he goes on the road. He's shown he can play well against top teams. He did it in the neutral field against Oregon week 1. Did enough to win that one. I have Auburn win this game. And this is a defensive. This is going to be a slugfest in my mind. I have Auburn winning this game 17-6.
Ooh, wow. Yeah, Vegas got the over-under at 48.5. So you're going way under. That does seem kind of a big number for two teams with some pretty good defenses.
That's a huge number. But yeah, I just don't trust Florida's offense enough to be able to score.
I don't either, and we've talked about it before. The eye test when it comes to watching teams, and again, they're a poorly managed second half from UK away from not being undefeated. And a tough game they played against Miami early in the season.
This is a very overrated team.
It's a very overrated 5-0 Florida team. I don't see them beating Auburn. I know it's at home. I know it's in the swamp. I feel like Auburn's just a better football team here. And I got Auburn winning this one on the road in Florida. Again, like we mentioned, good for Oregon if Auburn wins this one, because they want Auburn to win the ranked games to make their loss look a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Florida's got the right thing going. They're just not there yet, and I think this week is going to show it. I think Auburn wins this one. I don't think the game is in jeopardy. Now, it may be a close game, but I don't think Auburn's ever got it in jeopardy where they're in jeopardy of losing the game.
If this game was being played at Auburn, I would say Auburn by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
But
maybe
even more.
Makes a difference. The swamp's going to keep this game a little closer than it should be, but I don't think it's ever going to be in doubt. Where Auburn, I don't think Florida's ever going to be driving to win the game at this point.
There you go. So Auburn seemingly should go on the road and get a nice win. It'll look good on their resume for now. We'll see how Florida plays out the rest of the season. Yep. So now we have to move on to our upset picks of the week. Maryland really screwed the pooch for me a week ago. Thanks a lot, Terrapins. Go back in your shells, you jerks.
Terrapins.
What's it matter?
The Terrapins is my high school.
They're the Spartans.
Yeah, well, the Terrapins high school. Anyway, the Terrapins. Yeah, bums.
Terrapins. Like I'm just mimicking Charles Barkley. Terrible. Terrapins.
I'm with you.
Oh, and then Central didn't do you any favors against Western.
No, they didn't. They didn't decide to start playing offense till the end of the game. They actually outgained Western, which was pretty good. Again, all positive signs considering they averaged 190 yards per game last year. I'll take them all as positive signs.
Let's get positive signs going this week, and let's go 2-0 on our upset picks. Who goes down?
I got the Golden Knights losing to UC. UC playing the Friday night game at home. Now, the social media tease us with a black field, which, by the way, the graphic looks amazing.
But you can't do it.
If you could have done it. For those of you who haven't seen it, they did the Bearcat eyes, which is one of their logos.
The field is black.
The field was black. Bearcat eyes, a red outline of the cityscape.
Yeah.
Going from goal line to goal line. One red end zone, one white end zone. Like, it looked phenomenal.
And apparently they were just, their social media, they were trolling.
Social media for like 30 minutes before they posted that.
Just kidding.
That we can't do it. The NCAA rules. It looked amazing. But anyways, despite not having the black field, it is still a blackout. They're going black on black from the uniforms, black in the stadium. I got UC beating the Golden Knights at home Friday night, which is for high school football only, but they scheduled the game to put it on ESPN. Hopefully I'll get a chance to watch the end of it after we end up beating Walnut Hills. But I got UCF going down to UC at home in Nippert.
There you go. So the Knights would be 2 losses now in the regular season. What's going on, Josh Heupel?
Yeah, what the hell? You're blowing it up there. Like, you're supposed to be competing for national titles.
Well, then he's talking this week too that Brandon Wimbush, the Notre Dame transfer quarterback, he was talking this week. I may move him to receiver. Good transfer.
Good work. I'm sure that's exactly why he came there.
Yeah,
to move to receiver.
So there you go. So Adam has Central Florida going down. It's nice to see you have an unranked team beating a ranked team. I know you were kind of first couple of weeks going for.
I waffle on them a little bit.
Well, you were going for more like the spread numbers as far as upsets.
And I had to. Well, obviously I got to go with Central. I had to pick Central the last week.
I understand.
But yeah, going with the unranked over the ranked and. UC, man, I'll tell you what, they're playing some good football over there.
Enjoy Luke Fickell while you got him because he won't be there much longer.
Luke Fickell will not be there much longer. Now we talked about Lovie Smith in Illinois. That makes an easy move. Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee.
That's the one.
That's a move.
That might be the one. That might be the one.
Luke Fickell, I've met Luke.
Follow
Fickell.
the Butch Jones trail.
Yeah, Luke Fickell's a really nice guy, and he's got it figured out here at UC. After the stinker they had for a couple of years with the old man, I forgot his name already.
Tommy Tuberville, who's now running for Senate in Alabama.
Yeah, but he very may well win that. But yeah, they got a good one in Luke Fickell, and again, enjoy him while it lasts because he ain't gonna be here very long.
No, he's not gonna be there much longer. All right, so Adam has Cincinnati upsetting Central Florida.
Who you got?
West Virginia.
Going down.
Do I get subpoenaed for this?
I don't know.
For doing this, the horns down.
They already told the Oklahoma cheerleaders they can't do horns.
Am I going to get a petition
for 2 weeks from now?
Do I get a petition for this? Are we going to have to remove this episode from Fumblegate if I do the horns down? I have West Virginia upsetting Texas. This game's in Morgantown, so that goes more towards that point.
Yeah.
But you look at this, a couple of reasons why. West Virginia's 3-1, nice start after getting bludgeoned by Missouri early on in the year. They've turned it around, got to 3-1 on the year, but. On the other, I'm looking more at the other side. Sam Ehlinger has been awesome for Texas thus far. 15 touchdowns, 1 pick. So, he's going to move the ball. He's going to put up points.
He ain't bad.
No, he's not. But you also have a Texas defense that has been rather stinky.
Porous,
They're giving up 437 yards per game.
Not exactly stout.
Yeah. They had the loss at home to LSU a couple of weeks ago in which Joe Burrow tore that defense to pieces. He's not the only one. But you also have now that this defense is going on the road, and then you also think about Texas has Oklahoma next week in the Red River rivalry.
They're probably looking at that one.
For me, this is an absolute trap game.
Yeah.
That you could easily get caught going forward. Yes, I said West Virginia's 3-1. It's not an impressive 3-1. Neil Brown, former Kentucky coach, coming up from Troy, got him turned around after a really tough start. They're finding their way. They beat NC State. They beat the Fighting Les Miles on the road. So
yeah, but a 5-point win against Kansas don't look so.
No,
hot.
It's on the road and it's in conference, so you take what you get because Dana Holgorsen left him with nothing.
Yeah, there was not a whole lot left in the cupboard.
So they're 3-1. Like I said, it's going to be fired up there. It's going to be one of their biggest games of the season. To me, this has trap games circled all over it.
Yep.
With Texas, I could easily see them getting caught looking ahead because this is not a rivalry game. It's a long trip from Austin to Morgantown. I just have this when I started looking at the matchups this week and trying to find an upset. Part of me wanted to throw you a bone and say Sparty would win in Columbus. That's not happening.
Not happening.
No, that's not happening, and they won't cover the spread, which I think is like 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, they probably won't cover that either.
This is just screaming trap game to me with Texas having Oklahoma next week, and so for that reason, I think West Virginia wins this one, and all of a sudden, boy, if this comes to fruition. And then you go to Oklahoma next week, collar's going to start getting a little tight around Tom Herman.
Yeah.
Because the expectations this year were sky high. You got a second year under Sam Ehlinger. You really thought, his recruits are starting to be there and start to turn things around in that direction, but you lose 2 straight here. That's going to get a lot of pressure on him. And we saw how the pressure at Texas ate up Charlie Strong, who, by the way, he's going to be another one. He's going to get fired at South Florida, by the way. They've lost like 9 of their last 10 football games.
They don't look good down there.
So, I have West Virginia beating Texas. Again, this is a home game for West Virginia, but I have West Virginia beating 11th-ranked Texas.
Yeah, Texas, 2 in a row. Like their schedule's set up for them to win out after that. But yeah, this trap game, and then obviously Oklahoma next week. We know Oklahoma's the top dog in the Big 12. So 2 in a row would definitely make it a little hot there in Texas.
No doubt. So that's the bulk of our show here today. There was one thing that happened this weekend also that I want to get your thoughts about that I will refrain from comment, and I'll explain why. We said earlier in the show that we look everywhere to find kickers. Division I, NFL, Division II, Division III,
yep.
NAIA. There was an NAIA football result this past weekend that just you had to do a double take when you saw it.
Yeah.
The University of the Cumberlands beat Union College. These are 2 Kentucky colleges. Cumberlands beats Union College by a score of 98-0. This is a rivalry game. There's a trophy on the line. 98-0.
Yeah.
Now I said before, I will refrain from comment on this because as a broadcaster within the conference that these 2 schools play in, the Mid-South Conference, I will refrain from comment on this. But I wanted to get your quick thoughts on this, and as it was we are wrapping up here today, I wanted to get your quick thoughts on your reaction to when you saw this result of 98-0.
Yeah, you sent this one to me, and it's not a good look. Now it's if Union College even showed up is a little bit confusing, but I don't know how as a team you continue to trot guys out there when it's 98-0. Like the lowest scoring quarter they had was they scored 14 points in the second quarter. All the other quarters they scored 28 points. And by all accounts, they're still playing their dudes at the end of the game. It's just not a good look. And now I know that I don't even know where to go with it because I don't, as like a high school coach, if we were ever in that situation, even in a rivalry game, like at some point you need to protect your kids. Like their starting quarterback played the entire game. Their starting running back is scoring in the fourth quarter. Like now I know they ran a bunch of kids through, like a bunch of kids got carries and you look at, I think they got 12 kids that got a carry.
5 players had multiple rushing touchdowns.
It just, you're setting yourself up for somebody to get hurt, and the level of college sports, and maybe this isn't the case in the NAIA. At some point, the other team's going to catch up, and they're going to remember what happened in this game, and something bad is going to happen to you. Like you can't continue to play your starting quarterback when it's 98-0. Like you're just begging for him to get hurt because something bad is going to happen. And do you want to be the guy who got your starting quarterback hurt in a game that the score at the time was 70-0? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And by all means, if you're playing your third, fourth, fifth string guys, and I don't know how big rosters are for Cumberland's, but if you're on your fourth quarterback and you're on, a backup offensive line and they literally just can't stop you, okay, I'm fine with that. But to be playing your starters in a game where you're up 70 points, it's dickish. And 2, you're taking the risk of somebody getting hurt in a meaningless point in a game. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I'm all about, competing and not just taking a knee and continuing to play football. But thank God nobody got hurt, and thank God, the that they spread it around a little bit, but at no point in the second half of that game should you have starters in that football game. You just shouldn't. And then it's to me, it's dickish. Like there's no point to leave your starters in that game. I don't get it. It's I don't know what the point you're trying to prove is winning 98-0. I don't understand what the point of it is, other than you get to slap a banner up in your locker room that says we won 98-0. I don't know. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but there's always something out there where somebody's being an idiot, and we'll find it again. You call NAIA games and we find bad kickers all over the country. That's one thing we do. We both like football, and we find stuff that happens like this, and we talk about it. And again, if you guys got questions for us on social media, I know we had a couple questions in the chat today. Jimmy James and Elder Boy asked a couple questions while we were on live, and we try and answer questions as we go. If you got something on social media, you want to follow us on the Twitter handles there at the bottom. Send us a question on Twitter. Send us a question on Facebook. Send us a question here on YouTube, and we'll try and answer for you. We don't mind taking good questions. So if you guys got something you want us to talk about, again, we're no experts. We're just guys who like football, and we like to talk about it. And, we like talking every week, and that's why we come and do it. And, tell your friends about it. We think we're funny. Some people think we're funny. Give us a follow, give us a like, give us a share. And, we do this every week. So hopefully we'll see you guys in the future, and we'll do a little more Fumblegate moving forward. Jason, got anything else?
If there's something you want us to talk about as well, by all means, email it to us, fumblegatepodcast@gmail.com. All the social media stuff, as Adam went through. Send us your questions on there. If there's, like I said, if there's a certain topic you want us to discuss, maybe it's something that you saw during a game that you really thought was eye-opening or something that you...
Yeah, why did that happen, or why didn't it happen? Why did they make that decision again?
Anything.
We'll give you our opinion on everything.
Anything to that effect. So drop us a line on the social media, and as Adam said, we obviously enjoy bringing this here to everybody. Thanks to the guys that were watching along with us today and also chatting along, and we certainly encourage you to do that from wherever you are. Even if you're not with us live, you can always catch the replay, and if something catches your eye or something catches your ear that you maybe had a question about it, maybe you wanted to expound on a point that one of us made, by all means, drop it in the chat, and we will address it back to you. So with that, that's Adam Kieft. I'm Jason Grefer. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week and each and every Thursday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, here on Fumblegate on YouTube, and we'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Fire up chips, beat the emus.